Today, we are doing a deep dive into the side of the voiceover industry that does not get talked about nearly enough because it can be a little bit overwhelming. And that is the legal side and also the financial side of the voiceover business. Now, my guest today is uniquely positioned to talk about both sides because he is not only an attorney, but he is also an actor working both on camera and also in the voiceover industry, and actually wrote the book on the subject called Voiceover Legal. And without further ado, I am so excited to bring in Robert Siglampaglia to go over some of those topics that can feel a little scary sometimes. So thank you so much for chatting with me about this.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
And you took the time to actually write the book on the subject, Voiceover Legal. So I'm sure you probably get calls and emails from people asking you lots of questions about that side of the business. And I assume saw a need about this.
Absolutely. Every day I get people asking to review contracts. I get people asking if they have lawsuits for things. So yes, and the book was actually born. That's how it was born. It was born because they knew found out I was an attorney doing
Yeah.
voiceover. So they would ask me, should I set up an LLC? All those questions. And I just wrote them down because I kept getting them over and over again. And that's how the book was born. I just wrote all the questions I used to get and made a chapter for each one. And I actually used case studies in the book as well. So that's how the book came about, because of those questions.
Yeah, I know for myself, you put a lot of time and effort into actually getting into the business because you have to take the acting classes, you have to figure out how to actually get the demos produced. So it's a lot of time, effort, a lot of money. And then if you're lucky enough to actually get the ball rolling and you have a business on your hands, I didn't go to business school. So when I started looking into, what do I do? Do I stay as a sole proprietor? Do I get an LLC or an S corp? What does that even mean? And started reaching out to other voice actors and people in the industry, and they didn't want to talk about it. It's so personal, And so my goal here is to give people a few basics so they know where to begin their own research, and that way it can be less overwhelming and they can feel more comfortable and empowered as they figure out what's right for them.
Right.
So just to kind of get things started, my very first question that I had when I was getting into this industry is, my accountant went over a few things with me and was like, oh, right now you're a sole proprietor. I didn't even know exactly what that meant or what my other options were. So what are some of the things that people reach out about when it comes to, what is an LLC and does that actually protect me, that sort of thing?
Sure. I mean, well, to go back, one of the reasons why voiceover artists probably don't talk to you about it is because they don't understand either. Like, they don't understand the ramifications. It's a little, and I love reading all those. I go on Facebook and I'll read all the groups, because someone will ask this question, should I be a sole proprietor or what should I do? And I love reading the answers because you get more misinformation than you get actual information.
Yes.
So let me just put it this way. A voice actor, when you're starting out, you're starting up a business. All right. So anyone starting up a business, unless they've done it before, don't know what to do.
Yeah.
That's why every state has some form of small business guidance where you can go and talk to people, and then they'll give you resources on where to look. So voiceover is no different. So if a business owner was going to walked into my office and wanted me to help them set up a business, like say they're going to set up a pizza parlor.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to tell them, well, go out and sell a few pies, then come back and we'll set up your business. So this is what I hear all the time in voiceover. Voiceover artists will be like, oh no, just go out and get some work first, then worry about setting up your structure. So that's the total wrong way to do it. So
That's a great point, actually. Yeah, because that's how I started, was kind of the reverse there.
It's the wrong way.
Yeah, can I make it in the industry? And then once you start, you're like, oh no, what do I do now?
It's the wrong way, because when you start doing business, when you start to accept money from clients, you automatically are a sole proprietor, which basically means I'm just a person doing business. That's what a sole proprietor means. That's all it is. So you're completely unprotected, tax wise, liability wise, completely unprotected. So if when you're entering into that contract, right, you're entering into a contract, that's a legal agreement you're entering to with your client. If something goes wrong, you're on the hook personally, right? So if you set up a structure, an LLC or a corporation, LLC,
Mhm.
limited liability company, which you could set up very simply for one person or more, but usually those single member LLCs are what voiceover artists do because it's usually just
Right.
them. Or a corporation, you can do a corporation as well. It puts a veil of protection around you. So if something you enter into the contract with your client now with your LLC and not you as a person. And if something happens, your assets aren't at stake. The only assets that are at stake are the ones that are actually in the LLC. So when you're starting up, you set up your structure and then you can put everything through your structure. You can put your classes through the structure. You can put your demos through the structure. You can put, $1 as it's coming in through the structure. And then taxes become much easier.
Mhm.
You write all that stuff off. It's much easier to figure out, what's a business expense versus what's a personal expense because you're going to run it through your LLC, the LLC bank account. Your accountants will love you. And then you can figure out what's the best way to set up your LLC after you start, once you then start doing business, then you can start saving some taxes. So you can change your LLC to like say an S corporation, or a C corporation. You can designate your LLC to be taxed like an S corp or a C corp. So
Okay.
as you're starting to make more money, you can start to take advantage of some of the tax structures that are put in place by the federal government, so that small businesses can save money on income tax. So, that's when you start, as you're starting to go and sell more pies, get more clients, that as you increase your revenue, that's when you may want to jump in and switch over to an S or a C. But you should still have your LLC or your corporation from day one. It should be set up just like any other business, like
Okay.
a pizza parlor, like a barbershop, like any other place, because you're taking on liability when you're going into business. That's what business is. You're taking on personal responsibilities. So any way you can protect yourself is going to be the best way. Setting up the LLC, and then just talking to your attorney or your accountant as to which is the best. That's what you should be doing, but not debating as to whether I should be a sole proprietor or set up some kind of corporation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I do think a lot of people starting out are scared to take that leap because they're thinking, what if I don't make it? Or what if I don't make enough money to even cover the cost of forming, an LLC or an S Corp? So that is great advice, actually.
Well,
Um,
that's like also another so the other thing that I talk about with my clients, especially actors, is to get rid of the negative attitude.
mhm.
Because if you're going to approach it that way, it's going to end up being that way.
Right.
You're going to fail. So you
Yeah.
have to come in saying, I mean, before you spend $2,000 on a demo, right?
Mhm.
It's the same thing. Like why are you going to do the demo and spend that money if you think you're going to fail?
Right.
So
Invite the success. Yes.
right, and in comparison, setting up your business, it's only going to be maybe $500, $750, $1,000 max. It's going
Mhm.
to be less than doing classes and doing a lot less in classes in your demo. So if you're going to decide that this is what you want to do, then that's how I recommend starting, because it's a very finite starting point too. You know what I mean? That's a jumping off point.
Right. Yeah, the date I started my business and you can go from there. Now,
Exactly.
I know a lot of people are interested in having that protection. How often is that protection needed? Are you approached from voice actors who have been have been sued or who have gotten the cease and desist on having things on their website or things like that?
Yep, it happens very, very often.
Really? Okay.
I mean, first of all, just breach of contract that happens.
Mhm.
Voice actor got sick. Voice actor thought they were delivering files, but the other side said they didn't like these files, so
Oh,
then they end up getting sued over that. Or they don't get paid, right? So
okay.
maybe they'll do a
Yeah.
big job, they don't get paid, then they have to sue. And I'd rather have their LLC sue than them personally, because then if there's a counterclaim, it's going to be against, like if you're going to say this client I didn't get paid by the client says, well, your work was junk, that's why I didn't pay you. So they countersue,
Okay.
right? I'd want their LLC is the one to be sued, not themselves personally, because like I said, then it's not their personal assets that are on the line in court. It's their LLC.
Okay.
So, But those liability issues, anytime you enter into a contract, something could go wrong and there could be a dispute. Um, but I've also seen things that were like violations of confidentiality or non-disclosure agreements, like
That's what
with
I figured was the
especially with
biggest one.
drug companies, they'll definitely, if you like put something up on YouTube or put something on Facebook that you're not supposed to, or anything, you put anything up, you'll hear about it from them. So
Right. Okay.
I've seen those issues come up. Um, I've seen the biggest issues I've seen now are usage issues where the talent does they do a, a pre-roll for a YouTube 15-second little spot that's only supposed to
Right.
go on YouTube. Then it ends up being broadcast on national TV, for millions of dollars of ad spend.
Yep.
Those things are happening all the time.
And that's kind of my next topic. I wanted to ask you about red flags that I'm seeing in contracts right now, because a lot of people are sneaking in terms like in perpetuity.
Yep.
And if you don't know what that means, or if you're new to the industry and you're just so excited to get that first big job and get a paycheck, or you're so even desperate for it that you don't care, what exactly does in perpetuity fully grant them? And how big of a deal is that?
So in perpetuity means the client can use your work forever,
Hmm.
forever and ever and ever and ever till the end of time. So that's
Not what you want.
yeah, a huge red flag. You want to get that stricken, because no client uses your work till the end of time. Like
Mhm.
I've never seen that ever happen before, ever. Like they may not know how they're going to use that time, and that's why they ask for in perpetuity. But there's going to be an ending time that comes from whatever you're recording. So you need to force the client to pre-plan and figure out what that ending time is going to be so you can price it properly.
Yeah,
So in perpetuity is a big no-no.
and
So
I feel like, and let me know if I understand this correctly. If you were to get hired, to continue on the pizza analogy, if one pizza company hires you and they say, "Hey, we want you to do this commercial. We want in perpetuity usage," and you agree to it. Well, now if another big pizza company comes to you later on and says, "Hey, we want you for exclusive rights for a year. We're going to pay you a ton of money for this," you probably can't do it because you already
right,
have other pizza commercials that may be airing out there. You can't promise to be exclusive to them. Is
right.
that
That's a conflict, right? Well, I mean, first of all, the conflict thing is another thing that's misunderstood a lot,
okay? Hmm.
because the conflict, you have the commercial actually has to be airing for it to be a
Okay.
conflict.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
just because you gave in perpetuity, if they're not using the commercial anymore, if you did it 10 years ago and they're not using it,
Okay.
it's not really a conflict anymore because it has to be airing. So the chances that a commercial that you did 10 years ago, even if it was in perpetuity, being a conflict, but that's really up to the client that's hiring you. So
Right.
because
Hmm.
they may say, no, 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 I don't care. There was an in perpetuity contract for 10 years ago, so you're not exclusive, so we're not going to hire you. So it is a risk,
Hmm.
even though
Okay.
but it really the conflicts rule comes from the union rule, and it's supposed to be things that are already airing. So if
Okay.
things are
That's good to know.
airing, then so if that this is a little pushback you can give to your to your clients. Like if they're saying, no, we're not going to hire you because you did a thing 10 years ago, that's the pushback. No, that's not a conflict because that is not being aired right now. You can't find it anywhere. It may find on YouTube, but you're not going to find it airing, so it's not a conflict. So
Right.
that's a little ammunition that voice actors can use to push back. If a client is raising that issue, but
Yeah.
ultimately it's up to them. Of course, it's their final say. So
And while we're on the topic of contracts, are there other things that you've seen popping up that are red flags lately? I know in perpetuity, I see a lot, especially on the pay to play sites. And I do think it's just they're not sure what they plan to do with the audio, so they just
yep,
want to cover their bases.
exactly.
And
So
then I do see exclusivity a lot, but are there other trends that you're seeing that you're thinking, okay, people need to research before
yeah,
they agree to something like this?
absolutely, absolutely. So the biggest fraud scam, legal fraud scam that's going on in the business right now are lifts.
Mm,
So,
okay.
so you've got these big companies that would ordinarily use a SAG talent. They don't want to pay the SAG rates, so that they go non-union, and they say that they're going to pay you for one spot, and then what they do is they take that spot and they cut it up and make 10 spots out of it.
Right.
So if you
Yes.
see lifts, you're given the right for them to use lifts or different versions. You're taking a big campaign that they didn't want to have to pay thousands of dollars for, that they're paying a fraction of that, and
Mm-hmm.
giving them the right to use that one spot and cut it up. So that's a very that trend it's picking up very quickly. I've seen more and more and more of this over the past I don't know, year, 6 months. So that's something that talent have to be on the lookout for, that you're not being hired, by a big company. We're talking about big companies too, big name brands. So if you
Right.
see a
Yeah.
big name brands, paying you a couple of $1,000s for a commercial, it may look like it's good, but it's, probably could be a 20 or $30,000 job, because it could be a multiple spot job that they're just hiring you one time, and
Right.
they'll use your work to make the 20 spots.
Yeah.
So
And now that you
it's
mentioned that,
dirty.
I've actually recalling all of these audition specs that I've seen that have mentioned lifts like that before too.
Yeah, it's so dirty. It's just so another way to screw over the voice actor, which, it's terrible.
Yeah. Another topic I wanted to ask you about is I've seen on Twitter and social media a lot of people talking about union status, because some people are pushing to have like the anime studio switch to using union talent. There's been pushback on that. It's just been a lot of discussion out there. And I know some people hadn't even heard of what FICOR is. I think it's one of those topics that used to be very taboo and kind of scary for people to admit if they were or were not FICOR. But maybe if you could explain what that is when people are choosing their union status, if they get to,
Sure.
and what that could mean for them.
Sure. Yeah. FICOR means financial core. So FICOR is comes from a United States Supreme Court that dealt with not acting, but another union,
Hmm.
where the person did not want to have to join the union to get the work. So the
Right.
Supreme Court said that that worker was correct, and they don't have to join. They don't have to be forced to join the union to get the work. So every union now has to after that case, has to recognize financial core, meaning that they can still be hired to do a non-union job, even without having to be forced to join the union.
Right.
All right.
And
So
that can make a big difference for a lot of people, because some people feel like it's a great honor to join certain unions. Other
mhm,
people feel like, well, if I join it, I'm not getting enough union level jobs to actually pay my bills. And so this is just one of those options. Again, it used to be I think frowned upon in the industry years ago. And now it's more normalized, but it's still not talked about very often. Because when I was making this decision for myself, I reached out to several voice actors, and I had one person call me and say, "Hey, I didn't even want to put this in writing in a message on Twitter. I'm just going to tell you I'm FICOR, but I don't want people to know." Like, people are, they want it to be a secret still. But I just think it's good for people to know what it is, and that way they can decide for themselves what is right for their own situation.
yeah. So I mean, people, the union obviously doesn't want their actors to be FICOR,
Right.
and what FICOR is for us, for voice actors, is you join the union, so you pay the initiation fee,
Hmm.
but then you resign, so you become a non-member. You become a
Hmm.
non-voting member of the union,
Right.
so you can do both union and non-union jobs. That's basically what it is. So obviously, the union doesn't want their members to do non-union work, because it erodes the pay and the standards that the union are fighting to set. So
Hmm.
that's the reason they don't want it, um, or they frown upon it.
Right.
So true union members, they're not gonna they'll lobby against you from doing FICOR as well. Um, for my view of it is, FICOR really, it's most applicable to voiceover, because
Hmm.
voiceover has a lot of non-union work plus union work, and there's not as much union work in voiceover as there is on camera. That's like higher stuff, higher quality.
Right. Definitely.
Because if you wanted to be on a series regular on a TV show, or you wanted to do a studio film, something like that, you'd have to be in the union,
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
those are all union jobs. So it's voiceover that you're getting a lot of the smaller jobs. They don't even, the union are not even, they're not even signing up for the union. They're not even
Right.
thinking about it because they're so small.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's more applicable. It really is more of a voiceover artist debate. If they wanted to, it's really their personal preference for a voiceover artist. Like it, and what I would say, what I normally, the advice I give is, if you want to be a series regular or you want to do studio stuff, get in the union and stay in the union, and don't worry
Right.
about FICOR. If you don't care, if you want to do as much non-union stuff and you do the occasional union job, then find FICOR may be right for you. So that's kind of my little advice that I give.
Now, I recently read somebody put this, I don't have a clue if this is true, but they were saying in right to work states, you can
Mhm.
work in both union and non-union regardless of your union status.
Correct.
That is correct. Oh, okay.
So there's about half these 25 states in the United States are right to work states, which means right to work followed the case that went to the Supreme Court, and they passed right to work law mirroring that case, saying that unions can't force anybody to join a union in order to work those jobs.
Oh,
So
okay.
that would be for anything, electric workers, teachers, any union. So there's 25, they're mostly the southern states, 25 states. So you can basically, what would happen is any union job that was down there. So if you wanted to do like a film or a voiceover that it was a union, they would give you what's called a Taft-Hartley agreement.
Hmm.
And then you would just work union and you get paid union, but you don't have to join. And you can get as many Taft-Hartleys as you want. Whereas if it's a union state, like the other 25, then you're only allowed to get one of those, or you're allowed to get as many Taft-Hartleys within the 30-day period. But after
Okay.
30 days, you're a must join at that point. So you wouldn't be able to do another union job until you joined. And that's where you'd have to think about doing FICOR at that
Okay.
point.
Okay. Now, I told people on Twitter and social media that I was going to be talking to an attorney about the voiceover business. And I asked if anybody had any questions, and I did get a few. So I wanted to read these to you and see what you have to say.
Great.
The first one is, if I am hired to work on a commercial with a client, do I need express permission from the client to post the video or audio on my website as a demo for further potential clients?
Uh, that's a good question. The I would always
A
ask for
tough one.
permission from the client because
Right.
um, there's 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 written and unwritten rules about this. So
Okay.
the unwritten rule is you're not supposed to disclose a commercial that you did, say, until it's aired,
Right. Hmm.
because you don't want to give away your client's secrets, right? Even if
Hmm.
and if you sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, that's what it would say. But sometimes they don't have you sign a non-disclosure. So I wouldn't want to risk putting something out there that is a trade secret, because then you're going to get sued. Then you're going to get sued for that.
Let's say it's already out there and you can get a clip of it,
Mhm.
and post a link on social media. Hey, here's a commercial I just
Perfect,
did. You might be hearing on TV.
perfectly fine.
Okay.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah,
Okay.
once it's out in the wild. In fact, there was actually a court case about this that came up out in the federal court out in California, where an actor sued to get a clip that she wanted to put on her demo of a film that she was cut out of,
Mhm. Oh, okay.
and it hadn't been released yet.
Ooh.
And the judge ruled in her favor because they said that her part was not going to give away any secrets of the film. It wasn't right to the meat of the plot or anything like that. So she was allowed to use that on her demo. So
Hmm.
that's what the law is.
Okay. Next question. And this is something I actually thought about when I was making my demo here. When having a demo produced, can I use a corporation's name or tagline? For example, producing a demo spot of, say, a McDonald's commercial and saying, "I'm loving it." So this is
Mhm.
their slogan, their name. Would a voice actor be able to use that in their own personal demo if they've not actually been hired by that client?
Yes, they could use the name, the trademark name. That's fine.
Okay.
Because it's for demo purposes. That's fine. It's just to show what you can do.
Right. Okay.
It's fine. Using the music is another question. That's another issue. So if you're
Okay.
going to use copyrighted music, then you may open yourself up to In fact, I've had cases like that
A
where
different kind of lawsuit. Yeah.
yeah, I've had cases. I had cease and desists come in for clients when because they used clips of music that they didn't get permission for,
Okay.
and they ended up having to pay on those. So that's a different. The copyrighted music is different than the trademark names. So
Okay. All right. And then the last question I have for you here, what do I do if I find out a commercial client of mine is using the audio I recorded beyond our contract's usage time frame? So we already talked about that a little bit, but
yep,
what should be their first step? Should they just try to politely send an email as a reminder, or do you need to go ahead and get an attorney involved?
they should send a copy of the contract, send a reminder saying this was only supposed to be used for a year. Because what happens is there's turnover a lot of times. So the original people that did recorded that spot or hired the actor to do that spot are not there anymore because there's
Okay.
lots of turnover in the industry. So they may not realize that it's being used. There's a contract behind it. So remind them. I have two cases like this now.
Oh, man.
And but sometimes the producers are they're unscrupulous and they don't care, and
Okay.
they'll sign a release on your behalf saying that you agreed in perpetuity
Oh,
behind your
geez.
back. So that's one of the cases that I have. So in those cases, then you'll have you're gonna have to hire legal representation to pursue that, to get your compensation or to get them to stop running the ad. But don't be afraid to do it, please, because I've had many clients come to me, several clients with that
Hmm.
situation, and then they decide that they don't want to do anything about it. When we're ready to go, I don't want to do it. They get cold feet. Don't do that, because you're just letting the unscrupulous producers take advantage of all of us, and they need to be they they need to know that there's laws that do protect us and stop taking advantage of us. So
Yeah. And if you're the only person in your business, you actually have to stand up for yourself because you don't have other people in your business to do that for you. So
exactly,
it's important to do
exactly,
it.
right,
All right. Well, thank you so much, Robert Siglum Paglia,
perfect.
for joining me today and talking about this. And I know you have people reaching out to you all the time for advice, but if they want to check out your book and kind of get a guide to how to approach some of these topics, where can they find their book? What's it called?
It's called Voiceover Legal,
Hmm.
voiceoverlegal.com. Very easy. And it does talk about all these things. So if they're interested, they'll get more information about what I talked about.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I hope for anybody watching that this talk gives you enough information to really notice those red flags when they pop up and avoid some costly mistakes that could hurt you down in the future. So I want you to feel empowered as you make your decisions and less overwhelmed. If you do want to get a hold of me, you can reach out to me on my website, which is sandraosbornetv.com.